you forget, when you forget, you've got to find out all over again. When you forget, when you forget, you've got to find out all over again. You've got to climb up the mountain again. You've got to find out all over again. When you forget, when you forget, you've got to find out all over again.
Hello and welcome to the Intentional Clinician podcast. I'm your host, Paul Krause, licensed professional counselor. On today's episode, I have a very special guest, singer-songwriter Kelley Stoltz. While Kelley Stoltz is not in counseling or psychology, I really think you're going to enjoy this interview. As you can see, Kelley has quite an existential and philosophical edge to him, and you can see that both in the interview and the lyrics, and he's got some great advice just from his experience on how to live. Now, I'm going to be making this part of a series of music-oriented podcasts on the Intentional Clinician for many reasons. I think music is a great coping skill for people going through difficulties in life, and music is a universal connector. In fact, a recent study by Harvard showed that music really is the universal language, and that people can hear a song and know what they are hearing no matter where they are from or what language the song is in. Despite cultural differences, people were able to determine the function of songs from all around the world and in all different languages and all different types of things. And so even from a small excerpt, somebody could determine that. And I've always said, if you know how to read music, you can take a plane to Tokyo and sit in on a jazz trio if you know how to play an instrument and read the chords. And I think that's a great connector, and people find a lot of value in music, and it brings meaning to our lives, and it's something we can share or something we can do on our own. So that's going to be part of my music series, and it'll be interspersed with other interviews as well. But the first person in our music series is Kelley Stoltz. I'll be playing some of his songs in between some of the questions, and I was so glad he granted me this interview, as I'm a huge fan, and I hope you will be too after this interview. So before we totally get into the interview, I think it'd be a good idea for me to let everyone know who Kelley Stoltz is if you're not familiar. Kelley Stoltz grew up in the Detroit area, but eventually found his way to San Francisco after taking a detour to New York City, where he worked in the mailroom of the infamous Jeff Buckley. Armed with a 4-track recorder and a wealth of lo-fi pop songs, Stoltz began recording his own material, performing all of the parts himself, all of the instruments, and drawing comparisons to artists like Brian Wilson and Captain Beefheart. Those songs caught the ear of Monte Valliere, who helped Stoltz clean up and sweeten the recordings for the release of The Past Was Faster in 1999. After that, Stoltz upgraded to an 8-track and self-released Antique Glow in a limited quantity of 200 vinyl copies, each one housed in a different, originally designed sleeve by Stoltz himself. Antique Glow was then picked up by Jack Pine Social Club for wider social release in 2003, which both raised his profile and allowed him to quit his teaching job. Stoltz found a more permanent home for his music in 2005, when he signed to Sub Pop Records and released The Sun Comes Through EP. A full-length album, Below the Branches, followed in March 2006. Stoltz's band toured that summer as the opening act for the Raconteurs, which is Jack White's band, and returned to the studio in 2008 to record his luscious production yet. The album is called Circular Sounds. 2 years later, he toured with Echo and the Bunnymen and released another layered pop album, To Dreamers, which featured his live band on 2 tracks. Of course, Stoltz played all of the rest of the instruments in his studio on all the other tracks. I highly recommend that album. His affiliation with Sub Pop having run its course, Stoltz spent the next time sometime behind the scenes as a member of Sonny and the Sunsets, and he actually played drums on their fantastic album Tomorrow Is Alright, and he toured with them for a while. He also spent time producing albums for The Mantles and Tim Cohen. In 2013, he had an album called Double Exposure, which was released on Third Man Records, which is Jack White's label that he runs out of Nashville in Detroit. and it was a fantastic record. I think everyone should listen to it. In 2015, Stoltz found a new sponsor in Castleface Records out of California. The label was founded by John Dwyer of the OCs. They released In Triangle Time, a set of songs that blended Stoltz's love of music from the 60s and the 80s, and that was released in early November 2015. The same year, he collaborated with Sarah Beth Nelson on her record Fast Moving Clouds. His next musical move came as a bit of surprise to anyone who didn't know that Stoltz recorded a song-by-song recreation of Echo and the Bunnymen's Crocodiles album in 2001, and that he once had an Echo and the Bunnymen cover band with Spiral Stairs of Pavement, and they called that band Crocodiles. In 2016, he actually joined Echo and the Bunnymen as a touring guitarist, playing the songs he grew up loving. And actually, I think he's on tour right now with Echo and the Bunnymen all over Europe and the United States, helping them rock out. And I've seen them play with Stoltz, and it was fantastic. That 80s influence of Echo and the Bunnymen became even more evident on Stoltz's next album for Castleface, released in 2017, K Aura, which is amazing if you haven't heard it. And so that's a little bit of the bio of Kelley, and without further ado, let's get into it. All right, Kelley, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So I know I just introduced people to you and read your biography, the short one on the internet, and I like to usually ask people, something very current. For instance, would you mind sharing something you're really interested in right now, whether that be a project you're working on or something you're listening to as a consumer?
I guess, a project I've had going for the last year is, that's been kind of fun, is building my own guitars. That's been sort of a new, hobby for me. And by building, I should say, acquiring parts, reaching for my wallet and, charging things on the internet or at local shops, but assembling things and buying, kind of prefab guitar bodies and stuff, and then sanding them and getting them into shape, and painting guitars with the old style nitrocellulose paint that they used in the late 50s and 60s, and then learning to wire up guitars, Telecasters and Stratocaster style guitars, and that's kind of been something that's been kind of a different project for me. I'm not particularly adept at, electronics and wiring. So it's getting to solder and learning how to do stuff like that has been kind of a fun, different discipline related to stuff that I love. And, at the end of it, you have this cool little thing that you made and is useful in my music, or I could give one to a friend. I gave Sonny Smith a Telecaster, and I built one or two for myself, and one or two that didn't turn out you put time into and they end up not playing very well, and so they're just collecting dust in my garage. But that's been kind of my recent project that's given me some joy outside of music. Still music related, but kind of, outside. I don't know if it's the fumes from the paint or the smoke from the soldering iron, but, gives me a high of some kind.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. Making the instrument that you play a lot of instruments from what I understand, but seems like guitar is your lead instrument, perhaps?
Generally, when I play live, it is, because, it's easily transportable, and you can stand at the center at a microphone and, sort of lead the group. There was a period 10 or 12 years ago when I was writing more piano songs So I'd often have an electric piano or a keyboard or something as more center and do half guitar and half keyboard. But yeah, it's just sort of become somebody else's job, and I just sort of mostly just play the guitar now in concert. It's just the easiest thing to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that sounds interesting, becoming a craftsman in a way, making guitars. I mean, is that something you think you're going to continue doing, or is this just a little fun hobby for now?
It's a hobby right now, and I still get joy out of it. As I say, I started it about a year and a half ago, and I've built maybe 5 or 6 guitars. It's not something I'm doing every day. It's like if I'm not inspired to make music or not traveling and I'm home and wondering, what am I going to do today? It's something to fill my time, and you can get inspired when you pick up an instrument and maybe go make a song, with something new, having a new little toy. And, I love guitars, and I love records and musical instruments and stereos and all that stuff. I'm kind of always been into sound and making of sound or listening to stuff. So it's, I don't see myself wiring up stereos and speakers and learning to build, CB radios or anything like that. A guitar is a pretty simple thing once you get the hang of it. Although I still made a mistake on the newest one and it doesn't work for some reason, and I don't know why. But I was just working on it, before I spoke to you. So it's like it's just a different discipline that right now is fun for me. And will I do it in 10 years? I don't know. I've got too much stuff around the house, so I probably need to find a hobby that is virtual in some way. Maybe an avatar on a video game or something where I have less stuff.
Well, there you go.
Physical things to haul around for the rest of my life.
Right. There you go. Yeah, there's currently unlimited sort of video games online that I'm sure you could get into, but
got to be something in the cloud that I can, get into that doesn't take up any more space because I'm running out, So
yeah.
Yeah, or build very small things out of matchsticks or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, and I do like that. You create a new instrument, or you sit down at a new instrument, and the different sound can inspire you. I know when I write songs, sometimes I'll have to go to a different piano or a different keyboard, or else I'll keep writing the same song. Yeah,
something can trigger you to be excited, and sometimes it's just the joy of a new toy that you get excited about, and that can just lead you to maybe play it more and put more time into it than something you've played on 100 times. Although they have their own, old friend personalities that make you feel comfortable with an instrument, and that's important. But there is something to a new thrill with a new girl or a new whatever. It's like it can help you in your creative endeavors, especially at times when you're not feeling creative. It can be a impetus to get you to do something. So I took a guitar that I built on my last tour to Europe, so that was kind of like, that was cool. I was playing this thing that I made, and so I had a definite relationship with the instrument, and playing in Paris with the guitar I built felt pretty good.
Phoenix on the cold desert sky. I saw a ghost quite vividly in the wind with nothing of the Mojave. She said you must accept you're just a leaf on a tree that died. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Yeah, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
You just got back from touring Europe, and how do you like playing in Europe, or how was your experience this time?
It was a good experience. Been there, 10 or 15, times over the last 15 years. So it's, it's a slow and I don't know if steady, but it's approaching steady, a slow and steady build each time. It's 10 people some places, 50 people some places, 300 people some places. So I do feel like the last couple times I've gone over, there's been better shows, more well attended, and it feels like in some ways the my career is growing a little bit over there. I've toured there much more than I have the States. So I think I've kind of bearing a little bit of fruit from the work that I've done there over the years. Still a long way to go to make it, a financially successful enterprise for me and for my group. But, it's pretty good. As I said to my friends, I entertained dozens of people across the continent. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And it's a big place, and there's a lot of people, so that gives you an idea of where I am. But it was good. We drove ourselves for the first time. Usually I hire a driver. I have a friend drive, and this time, just kind of as a cost-saving measure, we decided to drive ourselves, and that was great. It was we were in charge of our own schedule, and if we're going to leave early, it's up to us. If we're leaving late and we're going to stop here or visit this museum or whatever along the way, so that was cool. And we all just took turns driving, and it was great. So I'm recommend that to anybody. You can drive in England. It takes 24 hours, and you feel pretty much comfortable on the wrong side of the road or a different side of the road. And that was our main concern, that and driving around in Scotland in the middle of a huge snowstorm and everything. So we tested our mettle, and we did fine. So that was good. And I'll probably get back there. I go there kind of once every year or year and a half with a new record. So they'll be back there sooner or later.
Yeah, I was actually, that was one of my questions. Just, I guess, I'm trying to stay as the interviewer, but as a fan, I was wondering about, you seem to be touring Europe very actively, and not as much outside of California, except a couple times. I was just curious, is that a strategy, or is that because people seem to buy more records in Europe, or? Yeah,
I think for an artist at my level, it's it's difficult. And I did more touring in the 2003 to 2010, and got out and around. And at some point, I just had to get realistic. It's just not catching fire in a way that's financially doable for me to play St. Louis on a Tuesday and Birmingham, Alabama the next night for 11 people and sell 2 records and a T-shirt. It's just not taking off in that way, and it's discouraging, but it's the reality that I work in, and so I think I kind of felt like if I'm going to tour and I'm going to spend the money, then I'm going to go to somewhere that's far away and interesting and is in a different culture and in a different country and in a different language, and kind of learn, not learn, but just enjoy that part of my job as kind of almost a working vacation in a way. It doesn't turn out to be much of a vacation because you're pretty much just exhausted all the time, and you're lifting heavy objects in the middle of the night, and driving a lot during the day, so you don't get to see as much as you would on a vacation. But I just somewhere along the way decided, if I had to play Phoenix or Amsterdam, I'm gonna rather go to play in Amsterdam for 40 people than in Phoenix, and you can extrapolate that across the country and compare that to places in Europe. And it was just a decision that I made. I'm not a big touring person. The thrill of the vans and the hotels and the relentless schedule never was really my thing. I love performing. I enjoy being on stage and playing for people, but sitting in a car for 6 hours a day is just awful. And anybody who tries to glorify life on the road, I just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I like the comforts of home. I like to be around my stuff. And most importantly, I like to be able to go to my studio every day and make up a song. That's what I really enjoy doing, the craft of making up music and playing a melody on a keyboard and trying to make a song up, and so I get, equal joy out of that as I do performing live. So for me, I can play live in San Francisco every 3 weeks and go home and sleep in my own bed and get my thrills that way. There is a lot to be said about how you can grow as a musician and an entertainer by playing 30 nights in a row. But for me, it was just, I'm not young and pliable anymore. I'm old and grumpy. And so I feel like those days are kind of where I really want to be traveling day after day for months at a time. Is just kind of, it's not for me. And I've luckily been with some record labels who that's kind of an expectation that you have to push the albums. But I think people have, in the last 5 or 6 years, realized I'm just not going to be that kind of person that's going to be traveling for 6 months out of the year. And I think my career would have been maybe further along had I started doing that, more seriously at 23 or 24 years old. But, I didn't really get my first record out till I was 27 or 8. So, my bones were already getting a little achy by the time I was traveling in my early 30s. I wasn't a kid anymore. So it's a young person's game to do that kind of stuff. And, I don't know. It's a good long line of excuses. I don't know. The real reason, I guess ultimately the real reason is I really like being around my studio, and I get probably the most satisfaction out of spending time working on a song every day and being able to come into my house and grab something out of the refrigerator and go back out and make music. And that's kind of where I get my biggest kick,
Yeah.
And so I think ultimately, if I could just own my own club, see, just down the street, and I could play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then let somebody else have it the rest of the week. That would be just right.
Yeah, like a residency or something.
Yeah, just a long-time residency. That would be good.
And it feels like love let me in, and nobody knows but me. Yeah, it feels like...
Basically, what I'm hearing is you write a ton of songs. I know that you've got a lot of albums out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe tell us a little bit about what... Well, I'm going to go backwards, but let's go to the future for a second. What is your kind of goal right now as Kelley Stoltz, the artist?
I don't really, I guess I've arrived sort of at the goal that I had, which was to be able to do this every day as my main source of income and my main source of fun, and just to remain interested in doing it, and, for the last 20 years, basically, most days I put in time from 2 to 9 hours a day working on something and learning to, even if you're not feeling inspired, to force yourself to work a little bit and see, because you can have days where you're tired or not interested, and you go take a walk and you come back and you give it a shot, and sometimes something great can come out of you on those days, and or you can maybe fiddle around with something and get discouraged and leave it and come back to it some other day and go, whoa, that was kind of interesting actually. If I just did this, and then you got this whole other song idea that can work. So my goal is just to be able to keep doing what I love to do as long as I can. And so, I've kind of been able to figure out a way to do that by doing these recordings for people, working a little bit at a record store, and occasionally, you know, a song will get licensed for a TV ad or whatever. And if you're, you know, smart and frugal with how you spend, you can figure out a way to make, you know, $20,000 last for a year or two, you know, and so it's just sort of, you know, I guess my goal is just to figure out a way to keep doing what I've been doing for the last, you know, 15 years, which is, you know, I've worked very hard to be this lazy, you know, and I need to, and, you know, I've got a dream job for most people. I'm, you know, in charge of my own schedule, like 5 days a week. And, you know, I go work and do a little bit of stuff outside the house and the other days to, you know, make a little extra money. So, you know, I'm very fortunate. So,
yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're writing all this music. I think a lot of people really love your music. You come up in some news articles, but you're not always in the headlines of things. But I think that everyone I've heard talk about your music, once they hear one of your albums, they have to go listen to all of them and buy all of them. That's kind of That's kind of the sense of that you don't write singles, you write albums. And
right.
And so, I mean, you write some singles or whatever, people determine that it's a single later.
I wish I could. Yeah, right.
But and there's been some singles that got licensed and got placed in college radio and all that. But I think that is I can tell a lot of artists. I've been listening to music. You know, I'm 36. I've been addicted to music since, you know, I was a little kid. And one of the things I noticed with some of my favorite artists in the 80s and 90s was sometimes they had these albums that got worse as they got later in their career. You know, due to the maybe stereotypes that you see on MTV behind the music or something. They just weren't inspired anymore. And what I'm hearing is, in a way, I interpret kind of the last 15, 20 years that you've been talking about, where you haven't been touring as much, but you've been writing a lot of music and also working in the music industry, kind of as putting it in this way that you're sort of a craftsman in a way.
Yeah.
A song's craftsman, because every album I hear from you, it seems like it's going into a new dimension. It's not repetitive.
Good.
So I think, and it's surprising, and I think the last time I talked to you when I was in Phoenix, you had put out In Triangle Time, and then you said,
right.
Hey, I've got a new album coming out. I was surprised because it seemed like it hadn't been that long since that, and then apparently I heard a rumor on Facebook that you're putting out another album, or it's out, apparently.
Right, yes.
I was curious about a few things, like maybe a little bit about your story, as much as you want to get into, or as little as you want to get into, but a little bit about your background. You mentioned in school you were the goofy one always making up songs, but I was curious, was there any other events or things in your life that you thought, I need to be a musician, this is what I want to do, this is my calling?
Well, I mean, I think I knew at a young age that I wanted to entertain people, and I wanted to, you know, I always looked up to musicians as a 13 or 14-year-old when I kind of really discovered music. So, you know, there was just, I had a band or two, but I never really pursued anything. You know, I didn't feel like, oh, that band ended, I better start another one. You know, it was just like, oh, that was something I did that summer, and that was cool. And, you know, I think a lot of the groups that I liked as a kid were from England, and because of my stepbrother was about 12 years older than me, or 10 years older, and he had a lot of new wave records, and David Bowie and New Order and stuff from the early 80s. And so I kind of inherited his record collection. So I was drawn to that stuff because he was also very cool and had dyed hair and played synthesizer in bands. And, you know, I'd never seen anybody like that in my little suburban town where I lived. And so he was kind of like, wow, this guy's cool. And I want to be like him, you know. So I think I inherited his collection, which was kind of a new wave Anglophile leaning record collection. And so that was very pretty much inspirational to me. So I never, paid any attention to a lot of American bands because I was more into the Bunnymen and Bauhaus and Tones on Tail and New Order and Depeche Mode and the stuff that he had from 1980 to 83 or 4 when he moved out, and a lot of David Bowie and Brian Eno and stuff like that. That's what he was into. So those became the records that I listened to, and that was, inspirational to me. So with that, I felt like musicians came from somewhere far away. And I was just a guy in Michigan, and and in fact, they may have been from outer space, because it was so far away that it may as well have been, a different planet. And who am I, and what do I have to say? And I really didn't have much to say. I didn't. What experience did I have to sing about? I didn't know. Only later in life do you go, wow, these guys were 18 or 19 years old. They didn't know anything more than I did. They only had their thoughts and their observations of their 3 miles around their house, the same as me. But I thought they were so deep and drawing on a well of something that I definitely didn't possess, Yeah. So, I just didn't pursue that in the way that I wish that I had at that age. I feel like I knew I wanted to do music, but I also, it was difficult for me to, I think that I had such a deep love of it that it was hard for me to put it out there or to share it with people until it was good.
Oh, okay.
Because I just didn't want to, I didn't want to suffer playing bad music in front of people and feel embarrassed, because I knew what was good and what was shit, at an early age. And, I had friends who would play me stuff who were into, the Eagles and whatever the hell, and the new Guns N' Roses or whatever was big when we were 17. And it was like, this is garbage, man. This isn't good. You're not gonna like this in 10 years, and,
right.
And that kind of went on and on and on. And I think I finally had that epiphany that I need to make music when I moved to New York and I worked for Jeff Buckley. I think I was, 21 or 2, maybe 22 or 3 actually. And I was living in New York, and I worked for his manager, his manager who had an office in New York. And I was kind of, would pick up fan mail or deliver, Jeff his 4-track, or they needed somebody to go set up the chairs at some PR event that they were doing at a Sonny Studios, or, go get lunch, whatever they needed, and, make a stack of all the plane tickets and put these receipts in this box, real mundane stuff that is necessary. And the low young kid that's their job and you realize I could be working at Subway or I could be working at a, carpet store. There's no difference. You're just on the business end of juggling paperwork and running small tasks. So I kind of did that because that was at an age where I was like, I really love music. Well, I love the idea of making music too, but I just didn't think, I had enough to offer anybody poetically or musically to really be allowed to do that. I wouldn't allow myself to do that. So I think working for them and having that realization that I want to be a musician, but I'm not going to do it. So the next best thing is to work in the business. Well, that's like getting close to your dream and torturing yourself, because you really want to be the guy on stage. And so at some point I realized I need to start writing some songs, and I'm going to have to suck for a while. And it's just the way it is. And so, I wrote some bad songs, and I borrowed a 4-track from a friend. And, as I say, over the years in high school and college, I'd made a few songs with people and gone to, my uncle had a little music studio, recorded a few songs with him, just kind of tried it on as an exercise to see what it was like. So there was stuff that I did. I had a heavy metal band called Slave Driver that we
nice.
we have made 3 songs, and that was, I sang like Rob Halford, and it was definitely a precursor to the whole Willie Weird. It was about being, living with a dominatrix and things that I had no idea about at 18 or whatever. But, it was like a Spinal Tap kind of thing. But that was like a precursor to what we had a song, Satanic Stepfather. How your mom worshipped Anton LaVey. No, how your mom loved him on their wedding day. How could you know he worshipped Anton LaVey? Upside down crosses on his arm looked so bad. But little did you know what possessed your stepdad. Satanic stepfather, death to you all. Satanic stepfather, there were pentagrams in the wall. Satanic stepfather, pitchforks and knives. Satanic stepfather, he'll take your life. So that was kind of, I was making those songs too, but I never, followed through with like, I need to go tour, or we need to put this out, or I need to go hang at a club and meet people who are in the business. None of that occurred to me. It was just something to do,
Right.
So I'd had a few forays into it, but I never really followed through. So at some point working for Jeff, I just kind of realized, I don't want to have an office job in the business where basically you could be working in any business. Mm-hmm. It's just, this one happens to deal with a product called Jeff Buckley, or a product called, Bob Dylan or whatever, it's just, so I thought I better get on this. And then I kind of started to record, and it was like the songs weren't very good, but man, it was fun. And, Sunday afternoon I could go fiddle around on this 4-track from, I'd wake up and make some music, and all of a sudden it was 9 or 10 at night, and the whole day had gone by, and I had fun. And that's when I kind of realized, I think I've discovered what my special purpose is, like Steve Martin, I got my special purpose.
Yeah.
And so circling back to now, asking what is your goal? I mean, my goal is to keep that feeling alive every day, that time goes by very quickly and hours go by in minutes. Well, not 60 minutes, but like 3 minutes, and sure. Like all of a sudden it's that night, and you kind of lose yourself in the project and lose track of time, and your worries go away, and you're in your own world, in your little bubble. And so when I discovered that I could make up songs and enjoy my life, that was what I want. Then I kind of realized, hey, this is fun, and this is what I want to do, and so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh yeah, that's definitely
a roundabout way, but I guess that's that's what happened.
It's a great answer to the question. So just to throw a little biography in there, and for the people that haven't heard your music, because this is going out to a whole different audience. So then you were in New York working for Jeff Buckley. When did you stop working for Jeff Buckley? Was that when you moved, or was that?
Yeah, I moved. He was going off. I kind of worked from 94 to 96, I think, and New York was running me down, and I was, I wasn't getting paid much money to do that, and I had another job at the National Archives, in a genealogical research library, which a friend got me. That was, interesting. It wasn't something I was interested in per se, but it was a friend had a job there. Hey, you need to make a little more money, you can come work here. So I worked there for a while as well, helping people research their ancestors on microfiche and whatever they used back in those days, which was kind of interesting. But I would kind of sneak away and look up Frank Sinatra's family census record in Hoboken and stuff like that.
Nice.
So I wasn't probably the greatest employee, but yeah, I think I left 96 or 95. I think I was in San Francisco in 96, so it must have been 95 that I left, and I moved home to Detroit for a short time and lived with my grandma, and my parents were getting a second floor put on their house. So that place was empty. They were living in a little apartment, and I just stayed with my grandmother and worked at a place called the Magic Bag that was a music club in Ferndale, Michigan, outside Detroit. And I got the job because I had I was this guy who lived in Michigan, but uh, had been to New York and worked for Jeff Buckley, and man, that carried a lot of weight at the Magic Bag. They thought I was, I wasn't just some schmuck from Oak Park. I'd been to the big city, and so I got hired and helped with bookings and put the ads in the paper, and so in a way I kind of continued that trajectory of being involved in music but not really performing. But the great thing was the Magic Bag was closed on Monday nights every Monday. So my friend and I started to sneak our instruments in, and the boss was cool. He knew we were doing it, but we would bring a guitar and a drum set, and then maybe 2 or 3 other friends would straggle in, and we would pour ourselves beer from the bar and go sit in the backstage and smoke a joint, and then go on stage and have these improvisational space jams, to an empty, dark theater. And that was kind of like baby steps on to actually playing playing a gig and having the experience of, oh, this is what a backstage looks like. Cool. Look at this graffiti on the wall and these dick pictures everywhere. Wow, this is something else. And, and it was a fun thing to do. And so that kind of was a way to have a pseudo experience of playing a concert. But hey, you weren't being judged by anybody. You were just with your buddies kind of having fun. And so, that was another big, good experience for me to do that and to play with other people. And it's funny because I was always kind of the leader of that group. None of us could play, and I was no better than anybody, but I felt like I was sort of in charge. People looked at me to like, how's this song going to go? And so that was kind of the first time that I was in that position, and it was kind of fun. And I think when February rolled around, I guess now I can figure it was February of '96, and that's when I moved to San Francisco. That's what I remember. The timeline now it was '96, and we moved here. I moved here with a friend of mine because we were actually loading out our gear from one of those Monday night, private concerts at the Magic Bag, and it was February, and it was about 48 below zero. And I had this moment carrying a guitar, and I thought, I'm living in a refrigerator. I'm choosing to live in a refrigerator, and it doesn't need to be this difficult. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to live in ice and snow 4 months out of the year, freezing my ass off. This sucks. And so the guy who played drums with me on those nights at the Magic Bag, he and I moved in his car to California, and we had his dog and his drum set and my guitar amp, and a carton of cigarettes, and that was all the possessions we had in the world, and some CDs and tapes, and we just drove out here and stopped and ended up in San Francisco. That's kind of where our money ran out. And my stepdad had lived here in the 60s, so I'd grown up with stories about the Haight-Ashbury and the hippies and the Black Panthers and the music scene and the Fillmore and everything. So I felt some history and curiosity for the place when I got here. And fortunately, it was the best decision I ever made in my life to stop here, and kind of out of dumb luck, but because we looked at LA, we checked out Monterey, we looked at Santa Cruz, and we could have gone on to Portland and Seattle, but we just didn't really have any more money. So we only had enough money to really put a down payment on a place here. So this was where we had to go. So we stopped here, and I've been here ever since.
That's a very cool story, I should say, about just kind of like letting go of where you were.
Needed to start again. If I was going to start off on this adventure, I needed to have a fresh start and start with no baggage and just start over and figure it out.
Yeah. So, thanks for talking about your biography a little bit. But so in San Francisco, is that when you really started giving yourself permission to release some of your songs you've been writing?
Well, I began to work on it, and share it with people or play it for roommates or have a gig or two, at the beginning. And probably 97, I played a few shows, 98, 99. And we're talking 3 or 4 a year, not once a month, or not. There was no demand, and I had no real awareness of who to talk to or how it worked, but you spend a little time at a club and you meet this person and you get introduced to a guy who has a studio, or this guy plays bass, and you like to record at home. Oh, cool. You should meet my friend. He does this, like anybody, you just start meeting people, and then you become kind of part of that scene of people who are doing stuff, whether it's, good, whether the songs are any good or whatever. Everybody's, oh, you make music. Cool. And what's your band called? And we should start something. And like anybody, everybody had at that time that I would meet was in a band or starting a band or let's start a band. And all those stories of, we've got a name of a group and you never heard about them again. And so-and-so plays guitar and you never heard anything from them again. And a lot of it was just things you would say at a nightclub or a bar, and none of it was rooted in reality for a lot of people. But, there were people who were doing stuff, and I was really working on learning to work my 4-track and learning to play. Luckily, I had a little basement that we built at our first apartment, and we covered all the walls in tinfoil, and it became our little clubhouse for me and the guy who played drums, Gus, and another friend of mine who lived with us. And we would just go down there and play music for hours and hours and hours. And we built it up and had, took out all the light bulbs and put blue and orange light bulbs in. So we had our own little cool club. And I had bought a 4-track and a mic. So we would make tapes, and they were just awful, but kind of learned about writing songs and the difference between a song and just a jam.
Right.
And, guzzling a bunch of beer and making a racket, and then actually the discipline of actually making something that you want to listen to more than once, particularly if you weren't involved in it. I still have friends who want to play me their jams, and it's like, man, this is so boring, But a song you want to listen to a couple of times, but somebody's rehearsal tapes, no matter how, interesting it sounds to them, if you weren't there, it's kind of gets a bit boring. So, finding out about the difference between that and an actual song that bears repeated playing and learning how to do that, that takes a while. So I worked on that, and I think that I had the fire more than the guys I was living with and more than the drummer who I came out with, and he had a girlfriend and got involved in, bartending and doing other stuff. So a lot of times after a while, it was whittled away to just me down in the basement, the other guys kind of dropped off after a year. So it was just me with a 4-track and his drum set and the other guy's bass and my guitar and my mic. So then I just thought, well, shit, I don't want to wait around for these guys. They went to the bar. They're not going to come back. I know how this is going to go. I'm going to sit here all night. They're going to blow it off. Or they blew me off last night. We were supposed to play. So I'm going to just go down there and play his drums. So I taught myself to play drums on his drum set. I taught myself to play bass on his bass. And then I learned how I could use my 4-track to make a song by playing all the parts, And so I would play guitar, and then I'd add the drums, and then I'd add the bass, and then I'd sing, and kind of realized that I could be in my own band, and I didn't need to depend on anybody else's schedule or availability from work or availability from their social life. And if I was inspired, I could go down there for 9 and 10 hours a day and make up songs. And so that's kind of where that all really started for me.
Yeah, I love that.
And it was a good place to make really shitty songs, but learn how to make them better, as I went, rather than have to share a bunch of crappy songs with people or try to get people to play a song that, maybe it's not that good of a song, but I learned how to write songs that were more true to what I wanted to listen to in that setting. And I learned how to work a 4-track and where to put a mic on a snare. And I learned how to play drums. I never had a drum set as a kid. I never had a bass guitar. I never had a piano. So I taught myself kind of how to play all those things once I got out here when I was, 25 or 6 or 24, 25. That's kind of when I started to get my hands on different instruments. And so in order to make my songs, I needed to learn how to play drums well, and I needed to learn how to play piano. So I just sort of taught myself on those things as they became available in various, apartments that I lived in, and that was it.
A couple of the concepts I wanted to draw out is you had this, felt this call towards music, but like you said, in Detroit at the Magic Bag, you weren't really further along than any of the other guys, but you had this kind of vision and dream, and then you went for it. You just started participating. I mean, I hear, you were kind of holding yourself back a little bit, like most people do, because they don't think it's them that has the gifts or the, wanting to share the art, like those huge artists we see when we're kids. But I saw this huge thing that I talk about all the time in psychology, which is participation. We learn from participating, and we learn from taking risks, and you took a lot of risks. I mean, you could have just been a bartender or something else, but you just went for it. And then with the friends, playing the music all the time, experimenting, playing all the different instruments, which is really unique, which I'll get to, but also allowing yourself to make mistakes. And that's a big thing I talk with a lot of people in their 20s and teens and even 30s who really have these great ideas, but they're afraid to make mistakes. They're afraid to put out a bunch of different things. And one of these episodes, I'm going to actually play, my new album will be out, and I'll be playing part of my new album and talking about it. But you threw away a lot of your tapes that were terrible. I actually was like handing them out, and they were terrible. My first, 4 or 5 little demo collections I put together. But I got feedback. People said, "Hey, this song is terrible, and this song is good," and that actually helped me become a piano player. But this is my hobby, not my career, and this is your career, and I see you going head first into it, even though you might have doubted that you might be some major artist, and like some of your heroes. You had discipline also, because that's a big part of it. Being in the music scene and doing mini tours when I was younger. There's a whole element of, drinking and all that is part of it. But sometimes for some people that becomes the whole thing. That becomes, they get too excited about the bar after the show, right, versus the performance before the after party. And so I hear you're all by yourself. And so I wanted to get back to you. I just wanted to kind of comment from the psychology end that I see you taking a lot of risks, and it paid off. The discipline paid off. The experimentation paid off, and not quitting. And so I wanted to comment on that, but I also really want to talk about this for a second for our listeners, on especially your new albums, but and a lot of the other albums you did a lot of the instruments, but I think on your new ones, don't you play every instrument?
Yeah, pretty much from my first record till now, I basically play all the instruments. I use my recording device as my studio is where I write the stuff. I don't kind of sit in my piano or with a guitar for 9 months and labor over lyrics and labor over chord progressions. I basically, each day is an opportunity to make a new piece of music and or to work on something that I started the day before or the week before or 6 years before. You never know. You just catalog things, and sometimes you're inspired to make new stuff, and sometimes you're out of ideas, and you can reach back to something you started years ago that you thought at the time, this isn't going anywhere, and you're able to mold it into something that's maybe it should have. You didn't have that idea or that inspiration at that point. So I will go in my studio and I'll play a piano or a guitar and write up a little chord progression and blah 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 blah, kind of spout out some syllables and some words that seem to fit a melody, and go, okay, I think that's cool. And if I have this, it needs a chorus here, and that's getting a little boring. Maybe it needs some third part, and kind of strum my way or play on a piano or a synthesizer different melodies and kind of get a song structure, and then quickly put down a guitar, and I have a good sense of time from doing this for so long that I've developed I can play guitar or piano, without a drum and be pretty relatively in time, and then I'll go add the drums to it and then fill it in with the bass and percussion and keyboards or tambourines, whatever it needs. It's just the ideas come really fast for me, and so my way of working is try to get things down as quickly as possible. It's like I'll have the song skeleton in my mind, and as soon as I kind of figure out that's the song, it's kind of a race to get it all down before I forget it. That blast of inspiration, you can almost hear the song in your head, and then it's a race to get all those things that come at you in that first moment down as quickly as possible. And I love playing drums, and I love to play bass. So part of me, I regret not being more social with my albums. And I've played in groups with people where I'm just the drummer, and it's a lot of fun to make an album with a variety of people. But on the other hand, it's a lot of fun to play the drums, and it's a lot of fun to play the piano and to do all those parts. And the way I work is, I've compared it before to some people paint, masterpiece oil paintings, and I kind of take a Polaroid, and it can be equally beautiful in its way. It's going to be a bit more miniature and maybe not as refined, but there's something to the way I work that I think is, I can listen to it and know that that's good. And years later, I think, gee, I really wish I had recorded that better or been in a big studio with some really ringer musicians who could have brought more out of it. But, some people call it demos or something. But for me, the exciting part of it is partaking in the puzzle of making a song and playing the parts and getting better at playing drums, getting better at playing piano, getting better at the various things that I play. I like that too, gaining the skill on those instruments. So, it's just as much fun or more fun for me to play the drums as it is to sing and to play, the chorus on the guitar, play the root notes on the guitar. It's more fun to play the drums. So I don't really want to strip myself of that joy, even if the end result might be a little more professional sounding or well played. So I've always kind of done that. And a lot of that goes back to that early experience where the guys I was playing with got more kind of involved in different things and fell away from the daily grind of going in the basement and working on stuff. And so, when I realized in about 96 or 7, that those guys weren't going to show up, even though we talked about playing today, it was up to me to do everything. That kind of stuck with me. So I've always just wanted to work on my schedule, and I've been blessed to have made enough money that I can do this every day. So, people have jobs. They're not always available. So I can go in my studio and do the whole thing myself, and I don't want to wait till my drummer gets off work at 6 o'clock to come play the drums, because by then the whole inspiration is gone. And I've wasted a day sitting around, and it's like, I could just do it now, and it's going to be pretty good, So, and I get to have all the fun of playing all these instruments. And as I say, figuring out the puzzle of what is this song what's this idea that I hear, and bringing it to fruition so that by 8 or 9 at night, I'm listening to it, and I pop a bottle of wine and sit back and, man, this sounds cool. I made this today, and hopefully tomorrow I can do it again, or I can add another idea to this song, So, yeah, and so all my albums are basically just me. Occasionally I'll have my girlfriend will play something, or, there'll be a part that I'm just not able to play well enough. And I want it to go bum, 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 but I've tried for 4 hours, and I'm like, I can't get it right. So I get somebody who's a little better, and they do it. But, most all my records are just me playing, and there's good and bad things about that, as I say. It's a little bit of it's a little sad that I haven't had that camaraderie with others in creation. You want to be the Beatles, where you've got these 4 different voices making one thing better. And I've met a few people over over the years that, man, I can make up a song with them in 10 seconds the same way I can, with myself. There are a few people I've met in my life that I can do that with. That's like a McCartney for a Lennon or whatever, where you can just bounce an idea and bam, they just know exactly what you're doing. And I love that feeling. And, but hopefully I'll be around long enough that I can do that sometime and make a record with other people. But just my process of really having nothing at the beginning of the day and trying to mold something by the end of the day, that either requires, that requires having people sit around until, the idea strikes. And so for me, it's just easier to kind of pull it out of myself, I guess.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've developed your method, which is very important to the songs. And I actually didn't realize that a lot of maybe some of your albums, you wrote all of the whole song in a day maybe and then tracked over it later. Is that what I was hearing?
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty awesome. So you're kind of capturing
pretty much everything. I don't have any, I don't have any lyrics laying around. I don't have any. No, I mean, I just, maybe at night I might sit on the couch and watch baseball and strum a chord pattern and go, ooh, that's what I'm going to work on tomorrow. And then I go in the next day and that's what, all the songs come together in a day or two, They just start with nothing.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean, everybody's song starts with nothing.
Oh, sure.
But, other people work in a more labored way that's, they get a pen and paper and think about, I want to write a song about, lovely Rita the meter maid, and, or whatever. And, I've just never been able to put music to pre-written lyrics. And I'm able to put words to music, more easily than I am music to words. I can make words. I usually make up the music first and then add the words later. And sometimes I'll hear somebody say something or I'll read something, and that a little turn of phrase, if you have a title for a song, you're in good shape, at least for me. And that goes back to being kind of a class clown and a person who's able, like I said, we need peanut butter, and I can write that song. And, I hear somebody say, we need some peanut butter. Well, I can write that song in 10 minutes. So, the words come out pretty quick. And like anything you do quickly, you realize later, ooh, I was actually meaning what I was meaning to say would have been this, and this would have been a better lyric, but it's already recorded and done, and I moved on to something else. So I guess there's room for improvement on all of them, and probably on anybody's music.
Sure.
No matter how long you labor over something, you may wish you'd sang something differently or written a different word, but it's just part of it. And it's I get really attached to the songs for those 4 or 5 days that I'm fleshing it out and finishing it. But after that, it's kind of just on to the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you love creating, and then I guess when you tour or when you play a lot in San Francisco or LA, you've got your friends or I guess bandmates from other bands or somebody that plays with you?
Yes. Yep. I've done solo shows with a drum machine and a guitar and sang, or a piano, and but and I've dreamt about taking my tape machine with all my backing tracks. That would be a cheap way to tour, but there's something to seeing that interaction with people, and I'd rather watch a live drummer than a bunch of stuff on a sampler. So I just have always hired in friends or whatever to play the drum, usually the drums, the bass, and a guitar or a keyboardist to kind of fill out the sound. That's where I'm at now. Where I am now is with a bass player and a guy who plays guitar and keyboards and a drummer, and I play guitar and some keyboards. And some things fall by the wayside that are on the records that you just don't have enough hands to play to fill out all the parts. But it takes on a different life kind of in the live setting, I think, and it's a little more rough around the edges, and I think that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing all this about the way you make songs, and I'm kind of glad that you write these songs in a spurt of energy. I heard an author once say, I think this is possibly an apocryphal theory, but they were saying that they felt that some of the stories that came into their mind weren't their stories, that the stories were just out there, and if you were listening, you would catch the story. And I've sometimes had a similar experience because, as I said, I write music for a hobby, but most of the songs I've ever written have been in 20 minutes or an hour, and I wrote them all down on the piano, and they all came to me, and the words came to me. The worst songs I've ever written were the ones that I spent weeks on or months trying to develop, and I've got a few examples of those that I will never hopefully play in public. But it's interesting that you're sort of capturing a moment, capturing a mood, and then maybe something influenced you that day, and then there's the song. So the cool news for us, the fans, and your future fans, hopefully from this podcast, is that there's a lot of material out there. I wasn't even aware when I was on Wikipedia that you had put out even some more albums that I didn't even heard, or little singles or something. Now, I'm going to be playing a lot of probably little clips from Antique Glow, Below the Branches, Circular Sounds, and some of those were on Sub Pop, and that was a label you were on for a while. And then Double Exposure, I think got a lot of press maybe because you were on Jack White's Third Man Records.
Right.
And then we've got, is it In Triangle Time or Triangle Time?
In Triangle Time.
In Triangle Time. I love that record.
Oh, good.
And I've been telling, I think I emailed the guy from Castleface to say that it wasn't on Spotify. I mean, I bought all your records, but when I'm listening far away, I just throw on Spotify because I figure you're getting a few cents. But that one's not on there for some reason. But there's also 4 New Cuts, which was the 7 inches. I'm going to play some stuff off of that. I think I got the download with that. And then the new album that everyone's talking about is K-Aura. And then of course there's a couple of the comedy albums, the Scuzzy Inputs of Willie Weird, Strat, and then I guess you have a new album. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's called Natural Causes, and that one was recorded in downtime after K-Aura. It wasn't really songs that were intended for that. It wasn't, stuff that just didn't fit or feel good enough. It was just a month later or whatever, I was done with that album, and I'm home, and I may as well try and write something. So I wrote those, I guess it would have been about a year ago. It was March of last year, I think I made those songs up, and it's only 9 songs, and I definitely didn't labor over them as much as I would some other ones. I kind of wanted to make something that didn't feel too fussed over. I think K-Aura and Triangle Time and Double Exposure, I really worked hard on all those songs, to the point where I was taking things away. Like, you start adding, it could have this or it could have that. And I wanted to get back to just the initial idea and letting that be enough, and a minimal overdubs. And, I'm not really, I don't really spend a lot of time on the vocals and sing things, for hours. It's generally the first or second take, and then maybe I'll write a different line and overdub a new lyric that I feel is better or something. But, I don't labor over the takes too much, but, anyway, but definitely on this album, I just kind of wanted to keep it very minimal. So it's just bass, guitar, drums, and some synthesizers and vocals. And it kind of harkens back, I think, a little more to sort of the earlier Antique Glow or Below the Branches kind of songs. Less kind of new wavy, synthesizery, and a little more just acoustic guitar or more kind of straight ahead rock and roll music, I guess, as straight ahead as I get. It's still not, it's not Rolling Stones or something, but it's,
right.
Yeah.
So I have a question about that one. That one, I don't even think that's available to the general public yet. I guess you said on Facebook that you were selling it at shows. Is that what's going on right now?
So I put that out with some friends of mine in Madrid who have a record label called Banana and Louie. And they've just started. This is their first release on their label, and they're just doing a small run of 1,000 records or something. It's not a big company, and they're starting small, and so they were always supportive of me and fans of my music from the first visits to Spain. And this guy Jesus Alvarez owns a record store in Madrid called Radio City. It's a great record shop there, and so I've done an in-store there and gotten to just know them as I've gone back to Madrid over time, and now they're friends, and so the last time I was there last summer actually, they asked me if I would put something out on their label, and I said, I've actually made an album after Keora that's just sitting there, and you could have that if you want. And so they were able to get it pressed to vinyl by the time I was here by the time I was there just this year in March. So I sold some at the concerts in Europe this February and March, and then when I got back, I brought some back on the plane with me. So I had 30 or 40 copies that I was able to sell at a kind of a record release show here in San Francisco. So some people here have it, some people in Europe have it, but I think the street date for it in the world will be in it's like June 15th or 16th or something like that.
Oh, okay. So it's going to be available for the rest of us
yes.
fans. Okay, good.
A blazing sun, orange on the pine, still in the club, stuck in triangle time, with a $500 bottle of wine. It seems such a steal, filling holes in my tie, with everything I was scared to try, like sweeping glass underneath the thigh.
Some of the songs are really about human emotions and different moods. And then there's other sides that it's kind of like a story or a scenario or like a character, it sounds like almost like cinematic or storytelling. And then there's several albums of complete joking, inside jokes, straight up humor under the name Willie Weird.
Right.
And also this new one called Strat, which I noticed a couple months ago. I didn't even know that you put that out. And that album I found great and also hilarious in many ways.
Well, thank God somebody did. Good. Uh-huh.
I mean, the Cape Canaveral Singers, I think, were one of the backing voices supposedly to that album. And I almost died laughing because I have a lot of associations with Florida in my head. But so I want to... I guess for the listeners who haven't heard all your music, I was just curious. Here we go. Well, what kind of inspires you to write all these types of different songs?
I have a multifaceted personality. I'm extremely interesting, and I was always a class clown in school, and I have a good sense of humor. And I think, my friends who know me well would, tell you that I make them laugh a lot. And I also have this musical side that can be serious and try to write a beautiful song and, a love of nice melodies. So sometimes those two things can't coexist, I guess, because my humor is often, raised on Monty Python and, absurd humor from my childhood.
Yes.
I have, a real love for that. And so for a long time, as I would write songs, I felt like I was a serious person, and people probably never, outside of my close friends, or people who maybe had seen me in concert where I went off on kind of a stand-up comedy rant, wouldn't know that I actually had a pretty funny side and a absurd side. And so I think at one point I just, I always am making up songs, stupid songs, singing along. I have that addiction to, well, not an addiction,
Compulsion
to write songs in the moment. So I'm that annoying person, that Ricky Gervais kind of friend who is, if you say something, I think we need more peanut butter. I mean, I think we need more peanut butter. We have run out. The cupboard's looking bare and blah. But I turn it in. It's everything is a song to me, which is really annoying for people. My girlfriend and my bandmates. And particularly in the morning when I have my first cup of coffee, it's like a stream of consciousness thing, and there is some, mental something going on, because it's not quote unquote normal behavior. But I'm able to rhyme, I'm able to mimic, I'm able to make up songs that make sense, pretty much on the spot about a variety of subjects. And I often would sing those songs into my phone, and sometimes they would die there, but occasionally I would go into my studio and, record a song, a humor song. And I think with that Willie Weird album, I started to say I feel like I needed to have an outlet for the goofier side of myself, and some of those songs that I make up in 5 minutes, and allow people to, maybe check those out to see that there is this sensitive side and then also a strange humorous side. And it's not always quite as dark humor as that record is, but I have a lighter side too, and it was important to me to feel like I need to express that and let people know that it exists, because you can get in a box of being a serious songwriter and it gets really tiresome. And Neil Young doesn't need to be funny. Leonard Cohen doesn't need to be funny. I'm sure they had a sense of humor too. Maybe they had a dedication to their craft as serious songwriters, but I was always trying to make people laugh as a kid before I played any music. So, I just, I have a need to express that side of myself too, as a, and it feels good. And I don't know if anybody gets the joke. I'm glad you do. I know some people like those songs and understand. But it just, it feels good to have a pseudonym or whatever, some way to express my real self, even if it is under a different name. Because the sensitive singer is not always the real self.
Right.
That's almost the put on sometimes. And the goofy stuff is the reality.
Wow. I love that answer to that question. I think that's part of, I don't know, what people are all talking about in the media with authenticity, kind of embracing the light side, but also the dark side of our personalities. And I guess for a singer-songwriter who's written a lot of albums with existential themes, love, loss, and really emotional songs like yourself, there's also this, there's another part of life, and this comedic absurd part, and maybe that's why I connect with your records, because I love that Monty Python, and
right.
I grew up in the Kids in the Hall era. I don't know if you know them, but
my girlfriend loves Kids in the Hall. Yeah, they're
very absurd. I think they kind of probably got some ideas from Monty Python, and I like both of them, but I think that's why. Yeah, I could see some of that absurdism. I have to say this on air just for people that. You should all get the Strat record. I think it's available at KelleyStoltz.com. But there's a song on there, and it stuck in my head the moment I heard it, and I actually laugh and chuckle to myself sometimes whenever somebody says the word confidence, because your character in the song is singing about confidence, and how he's got confidence, and then he says C-O-N fidence. Which is probably the most hilarious thing ever, because there's all these tropes of these singers who spell out the word. I don't even know. Is it Aretha Franklin? I don't know.
Right. R-E-S-P-C-T. Right.
Right. And they spell it out. And your character is, I don't know who he is in that song, but he doesn't spell out the word confidence because it's too long. So he just spells C-O-N and then
confidence. Yeah.
Which is, I don't know. I was dying. I couldn't.
Yeah, I thought that was funny too.
C-O-N-N
I'm kind of getting a picture of you, and it seems like just really involved in your craft, and I think then that inspires. It's inspiring more and more ideas because you've been able to focus on music, which is a real gift, given kind of what's going on in the U.S. The arts are not as valued. It's usually the first thing cut in education, and it's the last thing added to certain things, and not music festivals, but certain, I don't know, gatherings or whatever. Music's kind of an afterthought, and or different arts, and so I think that's pretty awesome, and I'm glad that you've been able to do that.
A little bit Stevie, little bit Christine.
Your job as a professional musician, but part of your job as a musician, from what I understand, is also recording different bands. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, well, that's kind of a side hobby as well. It's a paid hobby. I wouldn't say it's a hobby in that I get a great kick out of it. I don't really want to pursue a career in being an engineer for other bands because it's just not that much fun. You sit there and other people do all the stuff that you get the fun out of, and you were talking about when I was an intern, it's a similar situation, you're just helping somebody else achieve their thing, which, you can have fun in, and it's nice to hear the final product when a record comes out. But, sitting there for 8 hours in a room with a band playing, it's not the, for 4 or 5 days. That's not my idea of something that I want to do for the rest of my life,
Yeah, absolutely. So you produced some records kind of as a side thing for some people you knew or bands that wanted you to help them?
Yeah, mostly like local bands that I know. I've had a few bands. I had some people from Switzerland come and some people from Texas, some friends from Australia. So I have done people from, around the world, but a lot of it has been bands, from San Francisco who are either friends or fans of my music. And it's a way to make a little bit of money and keep kind of a hand involved, particularly with younger bands, and help them along their way, as they make their first or second record. And, I'm lucky that I do music full time as a job, and I'm make enough money to kind of survive that way. And so it just, it pitches in a little bit on the bottom line for rent and bills and stuff. And as I say, it helps kind of keep me involved with the music scene here as it evolves, and meet, young people who are doing stuff, or musicians that I like, that I'm interested in working with, and kind of get a view into how they operate. But as I say, the engineering part of it is fun,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not that much fun.
Yeah.
You can only get excited by your mic placement. At some point you just, is that really exciting to, I don't know.
I hear you. Yeah. It's much more.
It is, sometimes you make, wow, this is the best snare sound I've ever gotten. Wow. I learned something about if I use this mic versus that mic in this location, but I'm not scientifically wired that way to get a real thrill out of that as much as I am. I get more. I'm more excited about making the music myself. So it is a discipline you have to learn being an engineer. You have to learn to be a little more zen, because sometimes you want to interject an idea or a suggestion for a melody or an instrument, or why don't you try it this way? But you really have to learn to kind of keep your mouth shut and let people, it's their thing, and you have to respect that and allow them to go where they want to go, even if it's not what you're hearing in your head as the right sound or the right idea. And it's kind of about learning the learning the skill to offer advice at the right time, and be patient and understanding as people take a series of either maybe wrong turns to arrive at their own conclusion, and kind of helping guide them to do that in the easiest way possible, but also remaining patient when it is not when they take the hardest route possible. So there are skills to learn as an engineer and a producer that I think are valuable to use in your own music and in life itself. So I do appreciate that, and I have gotten a lot out of it for that. It is a different discipline though to when you're not hands on the controls of the instruments, you have to step back and let somebody else have their fun with that. So it is useful thing for me to do.
You have multiple releases on other European record labels and several American labels, and I was just curious, is that as to why you had so many different labels that you were working with?
Well, I think like a lot of groups, you meet people along the way on tour, or someone expresses an interest in this. I have a little label in, Spain or in Switzerland or, somebody in the U.S., and they're interested in, I'd love to put out a 45 of yours or whatever. And there was a guy in London called Stroll On, who was a young fan of mine, and he wanted to put some things out. And so, he was willing to put out the Willie Weird album, which I said, I have this kind of strange thing I sing through a vocoder and robot voices, and everything's not sounding just like my music. And he was game for that, which was really great. So he put out some stuff. So, it's kind of nice to let other people, it's nice that anyone's interested, to put those things out. So, if somebody asks me, I generally have a lot of songs around, and if I've got the time to mix them and get them finished and sent to them, then, I'm happy to have different things out. It all helps every night at the, merchandise table at the end of the night at a concert to have some things to sell, to, buy gas and hotels and whatever. So you need more stuff, to offer to people and help you along, financially, and also so these songs just don't die in a reel of tape or in a hard drive somewhere that they've never heard by anybody, So it's advantageous to have these little labels that want to put things out, and so I'm glad that to have been supported by people like that. So Sub Pop, I signed up for a 3-album deal with them, and I did my 3 records, and I made some good albums. I didn't set the world on fire as far as mass popularity, and I probably didn't sell a lot of records for them, but that deal came, and once it was over, it was time to find something else. And I knew people involved at Third Man, and Jack liked my music, and he'd taken me on tour with his Raconteurs in 2006 because he liked the Below the Branches and the Antique Glow records that he'd heard. So I opened for them, and so that was kind of an easy fit after I had left Sub Pop. I had this album, which was Double Exposure, finished, and basically they just said, send it over, and they, Jack listened to it and said, let's put this out. It's great. So that was an easy thing, and I would have been happy to stay at Third Man, but they had a lot of releases slated for the time when In Triangle Time was ready to, be put out, and they said, we can do it, but it's going to be a year or 8 months. And it was like, oh man, I don't want to wait that long, So I spoke with John Dwyer, who runs Castle Face, and he's an old friend of mine from San Francisco, and his band, the OZs, has gone, really great, and he's got a lot of, interest in helping people whose music he likes, and so he'd always been a fan of mine and a friend, and so he was just like, man, I'll put it out, we'll get it out, in 3 months, and sure enough, that was done, and that relationship went really well, and so it just seemed kind of no reason to rock the boat and jump back and forth, so I offered him the Teoro record as well. So, I would love to work with Third Man again and Castle Face again, or anybody really who is interested. You just want to go where there's excitement and interest in what you're doing. And so they've done a good job with this stuff.
You have this do-it-yourself kind of attitude in your music, but it's very appealing to people that hear it. But I also hear this kind of do-it-yourself with promotion. I don't see a lot of promotion out there, so it's like, as I said before, when people find your music, they sort of dive all in and they want to know more. But it seems like, Jeff Buckley had a whole, of course this was a different decade with a different financial economic situation going on. Jeff Buckley had a mailroom full of people, and you're running errands.
Well, he had me and his man, he had three of us. It wasn't
three of you.
It wasn't a massive enterprise, but he did have Sony. He had Sony in Columbia. He had bigwigs working on his stuff.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I was just curious. So I see you got the webpage, and you got your personal Facebook out there. I guess, where are the best places for people who are new to Kelley Stoltz to find your stuff?
I guess my website, which is kelleystoltz.com, KELLEYSTOLTZ.com. I update when I have shows, tours. You can buy tour shirts, merchandise, records and things on there, and it keeps you up to date on shows and any news that I have. But I do that website myself, and Facebook, I just never I didn't know the difference between a band page and my page. And then once I had all these friends sign up to it, I shy away a lot from this personal. I think we're all constantly being clubbed over the head with listen to this and look at me.
Oh yeah.
And I have a hard time making a new record and doing, a big Facebook post and bombarding people with information about my stuff. So I'm happy to just make a video, put it up there, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say about it. I'm not going to try to beat people over the head for weeks at a time, which I think is, in this day and age is kind of necessary, but it's just not really in my personality to act that way. So, as a result, I probably don't get out, the word doesn't get out as well as it could. And, I'm pretty, as I say, I'm focused on making music, in my studio and writing songs. So that's where the joy of it is. And the follow through with the lengthy touring and the promotion has never been my strong suit. And, there are prices to pay for that, which is, languishing in relative obscurity for the rest of my life. And, someday I may wake up and go, God, I wish I had pushed a little harder and been more of a pain in the ass on people's, social media sites or whatever. But it's, right now it's just not the important thing to me. And so I still, I just enjoy making the music, and I think I would make it if anybody was listening or not. I think so.
Well, I think that's most important, and the good news is you do have a good body of work out there. So word of mouth is king, they always say in marketing. And there's also something to being the artist that isn't putting ads on Instagram with weird music videos. I mean, I like weird music videos. Please keep making them. But what I mean is over-the-top produced music videos and weird, expensive logos and advertisements everywhere. So I think people are getting sick of the noise that's bombarding us at every second. And so that's you put a lot of stuff out on vinyl, but it is available in digital format as well, because I love vinyl and I listen to it. But a lot of times I find myself, as I'm a little bit of an I don't tour, but I'm a little bit of a nomad in terms of where I live. I find myself listening to things on my phone, which has the MP3s on it, or driving. So I'm appreciative of them being in both formats. But I think I'm glad that you have the body of work, because I think that's important, and that people will keep finding it and then dive in as long as they can get their hands on it. So is there anything you would say to a young artist out there? Maybe they're 12 or 13 in their parents' garage, or maybe they're 20 and they're sick of the university or something. What would you say to a young artist out there? Some advice?
whatever it is, whatever it is that brings you happiness for lengthy periods of your day, that seems to allow you to go into your own space, and whether it's writing a poem or painting or fixing cars at a repair shop, whatever it is that you enjoy doing, that you find time slips away and you get involved in a project that you want to see through from beginning to end, and you struggle sometimes to make it work, and but you always want to come back to it and see it through. I think that is indicative that you've kind of found your calling. And in this life, if you are able to find something that brings you happiness in the moment and allows your worries and the outside world and noise to fade away a little bit for hours at a time. And as I say, if you start something at 1 o'clock and you can't believe it's already 10 o'clock and you're still going 100 miles an hour working on it, and you're able to do that for days and weeks at a time, and it brings you pleasure, then you've probably found what you're supposed to be doing. So, you will figure out a way to feed yourself and pay the phone bills in time. And it may be a struggle to figure out how to do all that, but it'll work out, because people will want to listen, read, look at, drive the car that you fix, whatever you want whatever discipline you choose, whether it's a creative one or being a teacher, whatever it is that you find brings you happiness, that's really the thing that you should be pursuing, because you're meant to do it.
And on that note, thank you very much, Kelley, for coming on the podcast, and I really appreciate it. Everybody, I've been playing some clips from Kelley's songs, and you can find him on the web at www.KelleyStoltz, is that it?
That's right.
.com, and also on digital music suppliers, and of course, the best sound qualities, just go direct, buy the records from Kelley. And I would say one of the things I did mention, running around and listening to music on things, but I think there's another whole pleasure to sitting down, listening to a record, and turning off all digital devices nearby and taking in the music and having that moment. And I think that's important, something I talk about on my show a lot, taking that time to unplug. So I think Kelley's records are a perfect way, and whatever other artists you all listen to out there, to just take some time away from the busy life that you might lead, and try that out. So,
yeah, just don't unplug the stereo.
No, don't unplug the stereo, but yeah, you can you can turn off your phone and the television. So stereo is very essential.
Down in the ground, no one knows you're there.
And again, if you want to grab Kelley's records, head over to his websites, KelleyStoltz.com, Kelley Stoltz. And also right now, in my practice in Grand Rapids, we have multiple great counselors. If you're looking for a counselor, if you haven't found a counselor and you're not in Grand Rapids, please check out psychologytoday.com or look for your local resources. Currently, I am very full in my practice, so I am doing some consulting and some teaching outside of my practice. So if you're interested in that, you know how to find me, paulkrauscounseling.com or healthforlifegr.com. And as I said, I'm going to be having a series of music episodes throughout the year, interspersed with other topics. And so I hope you like this one, and thanks so much for listening.
Like a meteor shower, believe in the sky. It's doing it just for you, and you too. In a waltz, a blank call. You know who that's coming from. Some old lover ain't getting done. Some old lover ain't
tell me about your last good meal you had.
My last good meal. Oh man, is this a test? Or is this an audio test? Geez, I guess what was the last good meal I had? I just made myself a salad. I had a nice little spinach salad with some onions, some pickles, and a little side of hummus with some crackers. So, anytime you're able to feed yourself, you're in good shape. So I would say that was my last good meal. But I saw you at that show, and then the one prior to, was that a Sonny show or something like that?
Oh yeah. Well, maybe this will get it. Maybe the little clip of this will get in the interview. Oh yeah. Well, that was actually funny. I was going to bring that up, but I'll bring it up now. I just wanted to orient you. But I'll tell you. 2000. I don't know what it was. I was living in Phoenix, kind of, working as a social worker and a musician. I was playing playing my own songs for no money and playing covers for money. And, and then I think my friends and I were going to see Jamie Liddell, and they said, oh, you should see Sonny and the Sunsets, and I hadn't heard of them, or at that time. It's like 2009. It's like right after that first record or second record came out. Can't remember. So yeah, then I was out back because I always like to meet the artists, and I was going to meet Jamie Liddell, and then you and the woman from the Sunsets were like drinking wine in a van or something.
Right.
So, yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, that's how I met you, and then I don't remember. I think I became Facebook friends with you. And then she said, you should listen to Kelley Stoltz. Do you know who this is? And I said, I don't know who this is. And then I listened to your records, and then I became a huge fan.
Late afternoon, sitting alone there on the floor of my room, the fireplace crackles.